this is Ted Hicks from Late Night Parents. Ways to follow the show is latenightparents.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Late Night Parent or the Facebook page, facebook.com/Late Night Parents. Once again, I'm Real Ted Hicks, and happy to have a longtime friend and fellow basketball lover and former tag team partner when we used to air down the dial on Barbershop Sports, but now we air on the Happy Hour Network and a few other networks that we air on together. Danny Thompson. Danny, how you doing?
Ted, it's always a pleasure, doing your show. It's always good to sit back and, just kick it old school style, I guess. Are we really that old now?
Oh, well, I know I am. You're not. I'm the one that's ancient around here. But, I had a recent, Danny, show where we had some fun. And we were just talking about Fix My League. And it's an old topic we used to do 3-4, years ago. But what I wanted to do was switch it up because we're going to talk solely NBA, and we're not really talking about Cavs and Warriors for NBA Finals. What we're going to do is I wanted to name this a basketball mind, and I needed the best basketball mind that I know out there today to just bounce some ideas and just some thoughts and just some questions that I have. So I want to thank you once again for joining the pod. This is usually not the usual Sunday evening show, but this is a special pod that we do from time to time, and I would like to, in the future, get back to it more on a regular occasion. So we'll look at this as a new start. So without any further ado, how is the family? How's everything going with you? I know about you professionally, but how are things going with you personally?
In life we all do things that, in part of life it's all about growth. And as the clock turns from year number 33 to year number 34 in my life, I'm truly say that, my children are growing and they're healthy and they're happy. And, most importantly now it's just, like I always put a hashtag on Twitter or Instagram when it comes to a photo. It's just really, it's being the life of a dad. And it's, Ted, we talk about this, on so many different occasions, so many different levels. As far as personal goes, it's growing every day as a father, and being able to be that dad and being able to stand on your own 2 feet throughout all different types of circumstances, situations that you go through. And, it's taking it day by day and just being better than the day you were previous to that.
I'm going to tell you, because your kids are much younger than mine, it doesn't change. The need, the fact that they're always going to be bouncing ideas off of you, that's nonstop. And you see it as they get older, where they'll just come back and say, "Hey, Dad, I want to just, put this question out here," and and you see things that you did when you were young and you were growing up, and you would bounce things off of Dad and and Mom. But I just happy for you because I've seen the pictures, whether it's soccer and training and all of that type of stuff, and I'm like, man, when I see those pictures, it kind of brings back memories for me. Taking the kids to soccer practice out in Westbury, New York, and it's a good feeling. It's a really good feeling. So, what I'm trying to tell you, all in all, is cherish it because they grow up very quickly.
That is true.
They grow up very quickly. But as we transition from this, Danny, I got to tell you, there's a lot of things going on NBA-wise, and I have a bunch of questions here. I'm not going to try to hold you too long. But I wanted to throw out question number one. which is basketball related, but it's more business behind basketball. What's the status of Woj and ESPN? And what's happening with draft night? And the follow-up question to that is, it's kind of like the worst-kept secret, but who's coming with him?
Well, for those who haven't followed the Adrian Wojnarowski story, basically Deadspin and a couple of media outlets broke it right around the All-Star game that Woj was going to leave his position at Yahoo with the vertical and be heading to ESPN. So this, in basketball terms, is the same way as Kevin Durant signing with the Golden State Warriors. For those who know Adrian Wojnarowski, basically when he drops something, Twitter goes nuts on the basketball side of things. It's not a story until Woj breaks it or Woj talks about it. I mean, this guy, I don't know, Ted, if we want to go back to a hip-hop, our hip-hop days and references being in New York City, it's like being in the 90s when DJ Clue dropped a track on Hot 97 or Funk Flex dropped one. The second it drops, it's basically fire in the streets. So, what Woj brings to the table is that he is the best NBA insider there is. I don't think there's much of an argument behind it. There's some really good ones out there, but I don't think no one has as many sources or has the ability to break stories like Woj does. And ESPN knew that. I think the thing with ESPN was they saw, for example, not just the fact that Yahoo's draft coverage almost basically paralleled ESPN. It was the very, very successful and very popular free agent show they had at midnight, the night free agency broke. And to me, that was the most entertaining 2 hours that you could find because you could see Woj and those guys literally talking hoops, and you can see Woj, those guys on their cell phones, breaking news as they get it across the internet. So what this brings to the table is that brings ESPN basically burying everybody else when it comes to competition because really the domino effect starts. When Woj's leaving Yahoo, I'm sure that a lot of those staffers are going to come over there, Seamus Sharina, probably Michael Lee. In the very beginning, for those who remember, he also had Mark Spears when he first started the vertical, and now Spears is over at ESPN doing the Undefeated. So it wouldn't shock me if Spears would do some work with Woj and those guys on the basketball side of things. And what does that leave Yahoo in the situation? Yahoo was just trying to get out of basketball. Woj's vertical contract was a big contract, and for ESPN to buy it out and then pay him to do that, it's going to make ESPN even stronger when it comes to the basketball end. And I think Woj would be seen much more as an analyst, basically more of a behind-the-scenes guy, unlike the Bill Simmons deal a couple of years ago where ESPN got burned by putting Simmons everywhere. Which in some cases wasn't a bad thing.
Hey, Danny, I think I lost you. I'm not sure.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, so for example, sorry about that. So it's like the draft night situation. So what does it mean for draft night? Just know that they're going to break every story draft night. I mean, they're going to break it, before everybody else will. And so it's going to be an interesting draft night. I think it's the first night we're going to see those guys, with ESPN. So I'll be really interested to see what happens.
Gotcha. And that won't affect the countdown crew, correct? Or will they work in tandem with the countdown crew? Or
I think they'll probably use them more as the analyst kind of thing. If you remember back in the day, Ted, we watched NBA NBC. I think the smart thing to do would be we use Woj in that Peter Vesey role.
Right.
Breaking stories. He doesn't have to be on the panel. You just want him to break stories before everybody else so your website can shut the internet down.
Gotcha. And I'm guessing on the ESPN landing page there's going to be something for the vertical.
It might be under something else, but yeah, it wouldn't shock me.
Oh, okay. Hey, so I want to throw something out to you in left field. Some of these questions are going to be Danny putting on his GM hat, and you won't be fixing a league, but you'll be fixing some teams.
Okay.
So my question is, this summer, will the Spurs do something with LaMarcus Aldridge before draft day, or is this going to be after draft day? Because it's kind of, this experiment has been kind of underwhelming, to say the least. Or what are your thoughts on LaMarcus Aldridge with the Spurs now 2 years in?
I think, honestly, you have to really think about what you're going to get yourself into with LaMarcus Aldridge. Yes, he's being paid like a number one superstar, your A1 go-to guy, but realize a lot of guys are being paid in that same role and are not that type of player. Aldridge is fine. I think, and if they move him, it would be during the summertime because they want to acquire Chris Paul. And I think you can't acquire Chris Paul if you trade LaMarcus Aldridge at any point in time. The Spurs' main concern is what are they going to do about the point guard situation. Patty Mills is a free agent, and Tony Parker isn't getting any younger, and Tony Parker's owed a lot of money all at the same time. The Spurs know their only way to get into the championship window, get back into it, is adding Chris Paul or Kyle Lowry. It's one of the two. You have to add one of the two. But the problem is both those players command so much money, either one, that the Spurs cannot sign them outright. So in order, for example, to sign Lowry, they're going to have to, number one, have Pau Gasol opt out of $16 to $17 million next season on a player option contract. Then you cannot re-sign Patty Mills. You cannot re-sign Jonathan Simmons. You cannot re-sign, I think, Danny Green as well, too. And Hope Manu Ginobili will either opt out or retire, or it's time for a lesser deal. And then at that point, you either have to trade Parker and not gain salary back, or you have to trade Aldridge. And if you're Chris Paul and you see that the Spurs are going through a tremendous, rebuilding effort or reshuffling of the roster, are you sure you want to go through that as you come to your twilight part of the career? I think the Spurs will go out and go get them a point guard. I don't think they're going to re-sign Patty Mills, but it would not surprise me if they brought in Kyle Lowry before they brought in Chris Paul because of the difference in salary.
My only rebuttal to that is I find it hard for Chris Paul to leave, 200, 220, or even upwards of 240 on the table to take.
Well, what you would do is if you know you're going to leave ship, you would do basically a 1-1 or a 2-1. You wouldn't sign very, very long term. You'd sign a short deal and then basically gain your rights back and then sign the bigger deal later. But you're right. If Chris Paul were to take less money, then that would the entire thing that we've gone through and the potential basketball Armageddon was basically for no reason. Because Chris Paul fought for the older players to get paid as they got older for the accomplishments they had. I mean, in any other situation, would J.J. Redick be paid $17.5 to $18 million a year to be a sharpshooter? No. I mean, the NBA media, not to say they tried to do it on purpose, but Paul George lost $30-something million because he wasn't first team, wasn't All-NBA this year. The same thing with Anthony Davis the year before. The same thing with Gordon Hayward this year.
Yeah,
so Chris Paul fought for those players, and for him to take less money, I think it's kind of one of those, not to say slap in the face, but it's one of those we went through all this for this type of deals.
If you were running Boston or Washington, would you be okay with giving Isiah Thomas or John Wall a Supermax contract?
John Wall, yes. Isiah Thomas, no. Very few point guards in the NBA have the pass-first ability of John Wall, and Wall's growing with a developing offensive game. If you watched their last series against the Boston Celtics, how Wall basically was taking over everything offensively. Wall is a gifted passer, and he'd be the first one to tell you he would rather get his teammates involved. So for me, at that size, that speed, and that much ability to look for your teammates, I would definitely take him over a 5'9", scoring two guard that's very undersized. And so if I'm Boston, I'd be so skeptical on giving Isiah Thomas $190 million next summer. But if I'm Washington, I'm opening the checkbook for John Wall as early as July 1.
Okay. Another question here is, now let's just say hypothetically Kevin Durant didn't come last year. Let's say he has been on the Warriors for, let's say, the last 3 or 4 years. You had one Supermax deal. Are you giving it to Durant or Curry?
It depends on how the championship goes this year. If Golden State doesn't win a championship, I'm paying Curry the max money because Curry brought me a championship. If Durant gives you a championship, you would just hope that Curry takes less money so I can give Durant the Supermax deal. I think in any situation, if Golden State doesn't win the championship, I just don't feel as though you give Kevin Durant the supermax deal when Stephen Curry has led you just as far, and actually brought down the championship before Durant ever even did, or it took him way less seasons with the same talent.
Okay. So I got to ask you something about the process. I mean, and we love him. Fans love him all over, especially his fans in Philly, his core-based fans in Philly. But does Joel Embiid get a rookie extension? I mean, he's played like 30 games in 3 years.
No, because technically last year was his rookie year. So he doesn't have to work the extension for 2 more years. Embiid, like I said, only played in 31 games this season. To your point, he played a third of the season. But in that third of the season, man, he rejuvenated an entire franchise in that third of the season. I mean, to brand new parallels, and the Sixers fans have nothing to be concerned with, but just with so much happiness. But at the same time, for those who don't remember, the Sixers have had not 1, not 2, but 3 lottery picks. Actually, 4 lottery picks missed their rookie seasons. Right. Ben Simmons didn't play last year. Noel didn't play the year. Embiid didn't play the year before. Sarge was overseas, and Noel missed his rookie season too. So whoever is drafted by the Sixers, just hope they don't get hit with the curse of the injury. Because if you get hit curse of the injury, you're going to be missing the entire season at the same time.
If you could take over a team today, and here's your 3 options: Celtics, Sixers, Lakers, which one are you going for and why?
The easiest situation would be Boston. Only because of the fact of, yes, Isiah Thomas is an impending free agent. Yes, Avery Bradley is an impending free agent. And you have a very, very good team. But at the same time, you have the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. It is one of the more talented drafts we've had in a long time. And guess what? You can go use the pieces on your roster to go acquire a big-time closer that, if it came available, Jimmy Butler, Paul George, Indiana. Or if you don't want either one of those 2 guys, or you think it's too much of the asking price, you can go sign Gordon Hayward this summer, or go sign Blake Griffin. Danny Ainge has basically everything in the cupboard to use, but at the same time, he's under the most pressure in any GM in the NBA, because being in Boston, you've had 3 potential potential top 5 picks, and right now the Celtics have not gotten to at least the NBA Finals with any of the picks, and they haven't traded for a superstar or acquired a superstar yet. So to me, the most fun would be the Boston job, because you have more to work with. The Lakers is the most glamorous job, because you still have the number 2 overall pick, which probably could be Lonzo Ball. You have, it's L.A. You have your own television network. You have the stars. You have the glamour and glitz. You have Magic Johnson. So, yes, you have that. In Philadelphia, you have all the pieces. You just have not – they're just so young and so injury-prone that you're just hoping that this could be the breakthrough. So if I had a choice between those 3 teams, knowing the options, I'm going to take the Celtics.
You spoke about a couple of things, and I'll go there, the 800-pound gorilla. How would you address the Lonzo Ball, Lavar Ball situation? I mean, Lavar is not going to be lacing up his Zo2s to play for you, but it seems like this guy is more in the mix than any other dad has ever been, or maybe on the same level as Venus and Serena and Archie Manning. How would you address that? How would you go about it?
I mean, it's very simple. As long as this man is not degrading my franchise, I could care less. All right? All he does is right now he just brings attention. He's bringing attention to himself and trying to bring attention to a fledgling brand right now. Okay? LeVar, the more the ball kids show themselves in AAU camps between the baby ball, the youngest ball, and then the brother at UCLA, we'll see how the Ball family works. But you know what? As an owner, it's basically you check LeVar at the door, and that's it. You check him one time because he's not going to mess up his money when it comes to his child. That's the thing. If he's going to make money, he needs Lonzo to basically be a star player. So how do you do that? You just basically shut up in the media and let it go.
Good answer. Going to bounce around a little bit. If you were running the Knicks and Boston came to you with the number 1 pick and they said they wanted Kristaps Porzingis, what would be your answer?
Porzingis for the number 1 overall pick, I would turn it down. Because there's not a player at number 1 that can replace what Kristaps Porzingis does in the post or inside or the shot block ability or the three-point shooting, the all-around game that Porzingis has. And even though Lauri Markkanen from Arizona is very, very good, he doesn't replace Porzingis and Bird Shadow. So I think at this situation, you look at honestly, you don't pull that trigger for New York. You don't trade Porzingis, not for that.
I think that would probably be the end of Phil Jackson if he did pull the trigger on something like that.
It depends on what kind of haul you get back in return. It wouldn't be the end if the Knicks ended up with the pick, Marcus Smart, Jay Crowder, a third player.
Okay.
Because at that point, if you're a Knicks fan, you got all that for Porzingis. Do you take the first pick and you move down? You require assets. That's you do the rebuild, and at that point, you trade Carmelo Anthony at that point.
Okay. And the flip side to that question is, would you trade Ben Simmons for the number 1, 2, or 3 pick?
Well, in this case, you can't trade him for number 3 because you own the 3rd overall pick. I'm not trading Ben Simmons because Ben Simmons has not played 1 game in the NBA. Okay. I can't trade. Ben Simmons might have the shooting issues, and yes, it's been well documented. The kid can really not shoot the basketball very well, but he's not played 1 game in the NBA. At 6'10", with the ability to handle the ball like that, you want to see what he can do. You want to see what the hype is all about. So no, I wouldn't move Ben Simmons for number 1 overall pick or number 2 right now. Give me a year or so. Let me see what this can offer.
Where do you see Boogie Cousins after next season?
Boston.
Boston.
I think Boston's.
Why?
I think because what's going to happen with the Celtics is that if they do not land a superstar this summer, they're basically not going to re-sign Avery Bradley and move Avery Bradley for cap space. They're going to basically tell Isiah Thomas we're not going to pay you the max and then spend that money on DeMarcus Cousins. I think a combination of DeMarcus Cousins and Gordon Hayward in the East, and then you still have Marcus Smart, you still have Jaylen Brown, you still have what is the number 1 overall pick, and oh, by the way, you have the Brooklyn Nets 2018 unprotected first-round pick with Jay Crowder and Al Horford. I think you're in good shape at that point.
Well, as you know, we've all been waiting for the trifecta, the trilogy, and so we're here. What needs to happen for this series to match its hype?
Honestly, with the Cavs and Warriors, it doesn't have to be a 7-game series. It's 7 games. It just has to be very good basketball at all points in time. It has to be very good basketball at all points in time. Like, I think in this series, it's going to be a couple blowouts. I think you're going to see 2 blowouts. But I think, honestly, if you get, I think, 2 epic games, 2 very good games, and I think both teams are going to get blown out. But as long as the epic games happen in the most important moments, that's the series we're all looking for. We need 6 games. We need 6 very good games for it to be living its life.
All right. A couple of final questions for you. Who is next season's Rob Hennigan in regards to GMs?
The GM on the biggest hot seat?
Yep.
It'll be Dell Dempsey Horns. Because after what he gave up for Boogie Cousins, not say it was the biggest haul in the world, but if Cousins walks away, and you basically have mortgaged your first-round pick this year, you've mortgaged, Buddy Yield, and you've given all that up and you did not resign Cousins. I think Dell Demps is GM number 1 on the hot seat. And I think if you're looking for a second GM on the hot seat, wow. Going into next season, I would have to say it would be it could be, surprisingly, I would say, wow, Ted, you got me on this one. I would say anybody running the Sacramento Kings. I think the Kings and Pelicans basically, because basically both situations, the Sacramento Kings, because of what they have to do with the draft class, Vlade and company will basically be out the door if these draft picks go bad. If these picks go bad this year in the draft, you have basically blown 4 lottery picks in 2 years. I mean, Lebister is going to be, I think, is going to be really good. We didn't see much out of the Papa Giants kid last year. He spent most of the year in Reno in the D-League. But then at the same time, you have 2 top 10 picks in a loaded draft this year. If they cannot get the pieces they need, then Vlade has to go. Remember, this is the same man who said the deadline when he traded for Boogie, he turned down better offers.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. I have no idea how he's still employed. But, hey, so there were 2 GM positions open, Orlando and Atlanta. Both of those picks. How come we didn't hear Sam Hinkie or Joe Dumar's names mentioned with those openings?
Well, I think in Dumar's case, I think that it's the retread thing with Joe Dumars. I think, Joe with these ex Detroit was exactly ceremonious, but I think a lot of teams don't want to go with retreads. As far as who's the other GM I mentioned, Sam Hinkie, Sam is just picking and choosing where he wants to go. And at the same time, I think his no-compete clause, I think, is up. So Sam is just waiting for the right job. Right now, he's enjoying being out in California. He's enjoying teaching. He's enjoying those things. But don't worry. Once the Sixers process really ends, you saw what happens. Some team is going to want to do that same process, and they're going to bring Sam Hinkie in. It'll be another year or 2.
Is there any hope for some of these ex-players? Because, for a minute I heard Chauncey Billups' name. And, Grant Hill's name is always popping up as the president of basketball operations, but it never seems to fully happen. I mean, we've got some great players. I mean, we've seen the transitions from, let's say, like a Doc Rivers or like a Steve Kerr from, being a former player to being in the booth to talking about the game to running a team. How come we aren't seeing more of that?
Well, this generation's players are different. Very few guys are real true leaders. That, especially the bigger name guys, were never really true leaders. Like Chauncey Billups was a leader in Detroit. He was never a superstar, but he was a leader. So the superstar players that are transitioning, they are more worried about being themselves off the court and how to make money off the court. A lot of those guys don't go into coaching. Now, the next name I think could be a head coaching candidate, so surprisingly, it'll be Steve Nash with the Golden State Warriors. I can see that. If Steve Kerr were to step down, I really don't think they're going to give the job to Mike Brown. No offense, but I think because Nash has such a great relationship with Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson, those guys, it wouldn't shock me if they went first time route and went a guy like Nash. But it takes a certain kind of coach.
Is he still in a consultant role with them?
He is.
Gotcha.
He just does a lot of things with the players, more in charge of player development and those types of things. But he's very good at what he does.
Okay. Last question. When are you coming back on air?
June 1st. We are doing Full Court Press Radio after Game 1 of the NBA Finals. We're talking everything about Game 1. We want your opinions on what you saw, what you didn't see, what you want to see in Game 2. if you want to bash LeBron James, let's go ahead and bash LeBron James. If you want to bash Kevin Durant, let's bash Kevin Durant. I want to hear not just from Warriors and Cavs fans. I want to hear from the diehard NBA fans, and even the casual fans. So throughout the NBA Finals, we're going to be doing shows right after or basically post-game shows throughout the NBA Finals. And then once the Finals is over, we'll kick into the NBA Draft and then free agency. And then we'll be doing shows on a regular basis back here on the Happy Hour Network. And like you said, me and Ted, we are on a whole bunch of different networks, and we'll be letting everybody know where we're at.
Gotcha. So, Danny, best ways to find you on social media?
NBA DT29 on Twitter. You can follow the show and the site at www.nbafcpradio.com, as well as on Facebook at Full Court Press Radio. My work is on FloridaNationalNews.com because I cover the Orlando Magic as well as Orlando City Soccer, and pretty soon it'll be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Jacksonville Jaguars, among other teams in Orlando. And like I said, check out Full Court Press Radio on the Happy Hour Network, our set of affiliates starting June 1st. And, occasionally I contribute to Late Night Parents as well, too, when I'm not talking basketball, just talking about being a dad.
All right. Danny, thanks so much for joining us and participating in this podcast.
Hey, Ted, it's always been a pleasure. And, I hope to hear you on the airways when we're talking finals next week.
You got it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.